Hello, everyone, and welcome to Superman Homepage Live, brought to you by SupermanHomepage.com, the number one Superman fan site in the world. In this, our October 3rd, 2022 show, we're going to be covering a range of topics, including an exclusive interview with author Brian McKernan, who has written a book titled With Thanks to Superman. We'll get Brian on in a second. But to let you know how you can get involved in tonight's show and how you can ask questions of our special guest tonight, I'll introduce you to my co-host, who is back this week after having a bit of a tumble down the stairs at work, I believe. Welcome, Michael Bailey. Hey, Mike.
Not so much a tumble down the stairs, falling off a landing and landing side first onto some asphalt. I'm doing much better though, so that's the good part. And I have new glasses, so I can actually see you all now.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, that's
I
good.
can't see the people. That's going to make them feel creeped out. Anyways, in the past, we had a really convoluted way of getting you involved with the show. It involves Skype, and I think we had to pay some people off. But now it's really simple. You just have to go to supermanhomepage.com/live and click the join button. That's it. That's all you got to do. It's going to put you into like a little green room, and you could still watch the show as it happens. Or you could take out your fancy phone device and scan the QR code that's on the screen right now.
Yes, indeed. And for those who maybe are too shy to get on the camera or get on the phone tonight to chat with us, feel free to post your comments on YouTube there, right underneath our YouTube video. You can participate in the comments, chat with other fans who are watching the show, and Michael and I will keep an eye on your comments and questions, and we'll react to them as necessary. Also, if you'd like your question or comment featured on the screen as we go live to air, that's called a super chat. All you have to do is click the dollar symbol there on YouTube. A slider will appear on your screen. You decide on the dollar amount you're willing to donate, and we'll feature your comment or question live on the screen as we go to air. And thank you to our sponsors and patrons, Douglas Meacham, John Patrick Van Pelt, and Tina Murray. We appreciate your support. And if you'd like to support the Superman homepage, you can simply click on the join button below there on YouTube. And there are different levels of perks for different levels of membership. Well, Mike, just quickly, you've had a bit of a tumble, a bit of a scare. You bruised ribs, broke ribs? What happened?
No, well, I was going outside. I was doing something at work, and there's a little landing outside the back door, and somehow I stepped off of it. Did what was probably from a distance a remarkable interpretive dance, and fell hard.
Oh no!
I honestly thought that I had broken my ribs, but all the X-rays and I banged up my hand too a little bit. It's still a little swollen.
Mm.
Um, but all the X-rays came back clear. That does not mean it was a fun week. I had a week off from work. It was not a vacation. Um, and I had some bad
Wow!
side effects from the medicine they gave me.
Oh
So
no!
it was just like literally everything that could go wrong with this did. I am not out of the woods. Let me put it this way: last week I could not have sat in this chair
Wow!
without being in incredible pain. But I'm getting better every day. It's a little better. But you know we're not young anymore, Steve. We don't pop back from an injury quite as fast. So, but no, I appreciate everybody in the comments saying something. Everybody online was really sweet too. Um, I really wanted to be here last week. I had done all the work for it. I just couldn't.
No, well, we're glad that you're on the mend and that you're here with us this week. So, welcome back. Craig filled in for you quite well last week, as he can do from time to time, which is great to have some backup, but it's always great to have you back with us. And tonight we are joined by another special guest, another author who has written a book about Superman. We had a chat to him a couple of weeks ago on the side when we were speaking to Chuck Harter about his Superboy and Superpup book. Let me introduce our special guest tonight, Brian McKernan. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Good to be on Superman Homepage Live. And Michael, I'm sorry to hear about your injury. That must have been very unpleasant. Glad that you're feeling better.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I am, thankfully.
Very good. Well, Brian, you revealed to us on our show with Chuck Harter a couple of weeks ago that you have published a new book, and it was kind of an exclusive there that you kind of gave us a look at the cover for it and everything. It is there in your hands. If you want to bring it over to the front there, yes, here we go. With thanks to Superman, Brian McKernan. You're looking a lot younger there on the cover.
Yeah, well, it was that picture was taken a few years ago. Yeah, my hair was not quite as snowy white as it is now. Let's
Mm,
see. Am I intelligent enough
there we go.
There you go.
move this so that you can see it?
Yes, excellent. Well, I can bring up the cover graphic here for us so that everyone can see it on the website, on the
There you
YouTube
go.
channel. There we go. So it's with thanks to Superman, and it does kind of have a little bit of a subtitle saying 40 years of interviews, reports, and observations. So you wrote this when you were 5.
Oh, I only wish that were true.
Uh,
No, I was born in 1954, and so I'm 68. But I've been a Superman fan my entire life, both from the George Reeves television series that was always on television in New York City, where I grew up,
uh,
and the comic books that I read in the summertime. I had the good fortune. My family used to spend its summers at a little town on eastern Long Island where back in the 1960s there was basically no television reception. There was no cable television back then. So everyone read, and as a little kid, my first reading experience was Superman comic books. I had had the flu one time. I was about 5 years old, and a friend of my late sister came over with a stack of DC comic books, and I was hooked for life. There was Superman and Batman and all the DC characters, and I just loved, these the dimensions those color comic book pages assume in a young mind. It's like CinemaScope. So they got me at an early age, and I was hooked. And I have no regrets about that because it's been a lot of fun, and I'm still enjoying this most remarkable character of all time, Superman.
Now, so the book is out now. As we said, it's available from all different retailers, including through our website via Amazon, the link that we've got on our website. And can you tell us a little bit about just yourself and your love of Superman, other than when you were 5 and having the flu? Where the world of Superman has taken you over those years?
Well, I've always found the character fascinating. Of course, part of that is a large part of that, I suppose, was being exposed to it at a formative age, both the television series and the comic book. But I think it was especially the television series that got me interested in film production and special effects and how that is accomplished. And I was involved in broadcasting in college and in television production. And so that kind of was Superman was kind of my gateway drug, I guess they call that. And I recall, I guess it was 1974 or 75 when I was in college, seeing a copy of Time magazine in which it reported that Mario Puzo was going to be writing a Superman screenplay. And I'd always thought that what a great character for the movies this would be, Superman, if done well. Of course, there was the television series for the small screen, and they made that as elaborate as they could. And there was the Mole Men movie, which had been edited into a two-part television episode, of course, and that was. I always noticed that was like a little, just a degree or two more exciting than many of the TV episodes. And even as a little kid, I thought, wow, this looks more like a movie.
Mm.
I thought that before I even found out it had been a movie, a 1 hour film released in 1951. So I looked forward with great anticipation in 74, 75 when the news came out about the Superman feature film. And of course, was not disappointed in the film that was made by the Salkinds and director Richard Donner, and of course with the great Christopher Reeve. I gravitated towards a career in journalism. I was editor and writer at various magazines for 25 years. And to kind of feed my Superman Jones, whenever I had the opportunity to write about the character, I did. And it was kind of amazing how many times that opportunity actually arose. The first was at a magazine called Omni, which was a science magazine in the 1980s. Perhaps some folks out there who are my age or thereabouts might remember Omni. It had interviews with leading scientists, and of course, it had fiction. And of course, the fiction was science fiction. And it had covered it had covered the Superman the movie and Superman 2, and by the time I worked there, and starting in 1980, I got a shot at interviewing Christopher Reeve for the magazine about Superman 3, because it dealt with computers, and really technology was kind of a central theme of that movie, what happens with computers and people misusing them. So the full interview with Christopher Reeve has never been in print, and I've had it on my hard drive all of these years. And so I thought, hey, I've got this unpublished interview, and I've got all these other stories that I've written over the years. I became editor of a television production magazine called Videography in 1987. And the first issue I did had a picture of Superman on the cover. It was a report on the Broadway Video 1988 Superman 50th Anniversary TV special for CBS, the American Television Network, CBS, Columbia Broadcasting System. And I was in Manhattan, and a great thing about working and living there was that you could just pop on over, 5-minute taxi cab ride over to Broadway Video, the company owned by Lorne Michaels, who does Saturday Night Live. They were producing this special, and I interviewed the folks involved in producing that show. And it was a 1-hour special, and I wrote that up as a feature in the magazine. A few years later, I had visited the set of Superboy in Orlando, Florida. A couple of years after that, I wrote about that. I wrote about Lois and Clark, and the special effects, the digital special effects employed for that series. How am I doing in framing? I'm getting out of the frame here. In each case, Superboy and Lois and Clark, they really used the latest digital technology they had. And this was at an interesting time when digital solutions were being applied to television and motion picture production. This was something new. Digital is something that had not always been available to filmmakers and to television production companies. And Superboy was quite the pioneering television series in that regard, using a lot of new technology for the show. So in the book, that's one of the chapters, I look at how sort of the evolution of Superman on film and in television is analogous really to the evolution of special effects technology. And so I wrote about Lois and Clark, and then Jim Nolt, terrific guy we all know, who does The Adventures Continue, the fan group for George Reeves and the Adventures of Superman television series, had a fanzine that was started by Dr. Don Roden. And Jim took it over after a couple of issues, and fans would write articles for it. A lot of great articles, people who had actually met George Reeves, and all kinds of interesting topics. There was really it's a very rich subject matter. And I wrote a few as well. So fast forward to 2022, and I'm looking at all the articles I wrote and thinking to myself, 12, 15 articles, that's 12, 15 chapters in a book. I should put these all together in a book. And so that's how With Thanks to Superman came about. 40 years of interviews, observations, reports and observations, pardon me. Oh. And it's been a satisfying process. It's kind of a place where I was able to collect all of these stories. And I wrote a few new ones as well. Um,
Nice.
anyway, I feel like I'm doing all the talking. Feel free to shoot me a question. I hope
No,
this is
I'm
making
just now
sense.
I'm just now completely fascinated because that 50th anniversary special. One of the weird confluence of my life is that I'm a leap year baby. I was born on February 29th.
Oh,
So
okay. Superman's birthday,
so
according to,
yeah.
DC.
So that was my 12th birthday. We came home from dinner and it was on. I didn't even know it was coming on. So it was just like this big huge surprise. Um, so now I'm really wanting the book just mainly for that chapter among everything else. But was it hard to pitch the idea to Parvo Press, or were they pretty receptive to that?
It was very easy because I am Parvo Press. It's self-published with Kindle Digital Publishing on Amazon. And I came up with the name Parvo Press because I felt that I needed a publishing company name. Hopefully, I'll be doing more books under that imprint. And it was a lot of fun. I started it during the winter when you're kind of trapped inside because of the cold, and all of these chapters that had appeared somewhere else originally, I have rewritten. I mean, everything is a rewrite, expanded and improved over the original version, and so that was a rewarding experience to kind of have a first draft down. I mean, some of these first drafts were 39 years old. The Christopher
Mm.
Reeve interview was 39 years old, and I used a lot of it in my article for Omni Magazine. But pardon me, there were sections of it that I didn't use at all. And I hope people will find that interesting. Some of the information he talks about being interviewed by different people, and how some interviews went better than others.
Mm.
It was a great conversation because we're about a year apart in age, and it was like talking to somebody that I'd known for a long time. He was a very, very nice guy.
Fantastic.
And
Now, so you've been collecting and collating Superman information for, 39, 40 years, as you say. So what was
yeah,
that process like to try to get it together as a book? Like, how long did that process take you?
not long really. I just went. I had for many years had all of the things I've written on my hard drive in a folder, and because I am a writer, I wrote for from 2004 to 2014 for a public relations firm. I wrote for technology pieces for companies that manufacture broadcast production equipment, and I tend to try to be organized in that regard. And hey, there it is. And I just went into that folder and said, "My God, these are chapters in a book, and I'll write a couple of extra ones to kind of flesh it out, to really make it the kind of story, make it the kind of book that I think will appeal to people." And it was a remarkably enjoyable process, really, the whole thing. I guess because I was writing about, you know, what is probably my favorite subject, the most famous fictional character in the world. I have a Facebook group called Superman in Advertising and Media that I've been doing for about 5 years. And I have been uh, collecting examples of Superman in advertising and media for many years, at least 40 years. Actually, I think the first clipping I have is back from 1966, uh, when Bob Holliday was on Broadway in the musical "It's a Bird, It's a Plane, It's Superman." And I've just been fascinated by how famous this character is and how he is used as a ready reference in the mass media almost all the time, and in practically every newspaper and magazine you can think of. I mean, it doesn't appear every day, but in any given month, there's a guarantee that your local newspaper or your national newspaper or something, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, whatever it is you might read, will in a caption or a headline or in some form or fashion use some reference to Superman. And I don't think we see that with any other character. I mean, you'll see it occasionally, certainly. Shakespeare's characters and Shakespeare's writing have endowed the English language with a lot of phrases that we use without even realizing that they come from Shakespeare. But in terms of Superman, you see him referenced and name checked a remarkable amount with remarkable frequency. Also, he appears in advertising quite a bit, both ads that are licensed by DC Comics with permission and ads that aren't, where there's like some kind of Superman inferred connection there. Superman in Advertising and Media is the name of the Facebook group. And, to kind of further understand what I'm talking about, I encourage people to take a look at it. Feel free to join. Love to have you. We've got about 3,000 members, and just fascinating the amount of time Superman appears in the mass media, and not just in the USA. I mean, he's advertised soundproof replacement windows in Russia, and banking services in Iran, and fashion eyewear in Argentina, and polio vaccinations in India, and subway etiquette for commuters in Japan, and car batteries in Germany. It's really quite fascinating. And, you show a picture of Superman, and instantly readers all over the world know exactly what you're talking about. If you want to demonstrate superiority of some product, whether it's potatoes or who knows what else, put an S on it. That S is probably one of the most famous symbols in the world. And so advertisers are doing that constantly. You see that very, very frequently. And I've got lots of examples of that on Superman in Advertising and Media.
Yeah.
So,
great Facebook page. Thoroughly enjoy seeing a lot of the things that you post on there. And I've contributed a few from time to time for myself from Australia. So it's, it is fascinating. It's just
in fact, the first posts I ever did before I had the Facebook group, I used to post on your website on Superman homepage. The Continental Insurance Superman advertisement, from 1965, whenever that was, and all these different things. And it was like, hey, this character gets used in advertising remarkably often.
So looking at the book itself, I see that chapter 1 is titled The Superman. Now, does that delve into the various actors that have played the character, or is it something else?
No, that's about people I want to acknowledge who have done really commendable, remarkable, wonderful things to build fan communities and groups of interest where people can exchange ideas and exchange their appreciation for Superman. And what I mean by the Superman are the gentleman Jim Hambrick at the Super Museum in Metropolis, Illinois, who has an incredible collection there that people come from all over the world to see. It's in its own building there in Metropolis, Illinois. I mean, you've got to see this place. It's wonderful. And Jim Nolt, who I mentioned earlier, who has the Adventures Continue group that is all about George Reeves and the Adventures of Superman television series, which was really quite historic. One of the first filmed television series, and done very, very well with some very excellent talent. I mean, television aimed at juveniles back in the 1950s typically wasn't produced this well. It was shot on film. It wasn't done live. It was really framed more of in a cinematic fashion. The talent behind the show, whether it's the makeup people or the directors or what have you, worked on Hollywood movies. And it was one of the most successful syndicated television shows in history. It's still on here in the U.S. and probably in many other places in the world on the Heroes and Icons cable channel. And so, Jim has organized wonderful events in New York and Los Angeles, Sarasota, Florida, and other places. One of the ones that he did, one of the events was in 2014 in Los Angeles, the observation of the 100th anniversary of the birth of George Reeves and Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. It was a wonderful event. We had late Jack Larson there. We had Laura Siegel Larson, no relation, who is the daughter, of course, of Superman creator, writer Jerry Siegel. And we got to get a tour of the Pasadena Playhouse, where George Reeves sharpened his acting chops. So Jim Nolt has done tremendous things as well. And then there's Jim Bowers, who is a archivist, photographer, designer, professional, who has a wonderful website called capedwonder.com and various Caped Wonder Facebook pages, all dedicated to Christopher Reeve and the making of the Christopher Reeve Superman movies. Jim has spent years tracking down production stills and other imagery from these movies, the pictures that people have never seen, and making them available to be seen. And in fact, I wrote the text for his, see if I can center myself better here. I wrote the text for a coffee table book prototype that he created, and which was a fun experience, and it's a terrific book, and hopefully some publisher one of these days will want to publish it officially. And the other Superman in that chapter is a gentleman named Danny Fuchs in New York City. Danny is a Superman collector par excellence. He's really quite remarkable and a terrific guy. Everybody knows Danny, and he has specialized in locating and collecting, and also buying and selling rare Superman collectibles. A lot, especially things from the 1940s that are very hard to find. The coloring books and the premiums that were offered on the radio series and things of that nature. Danny's a great guy, and again, he is somebody who has really built communities of interest around Superman. So I wanted to acknowledge these the three Jims and Danny. They're great people, and I should have put you in there too, Steve, because you've done terrific things with the Superman homepage. And but you put out a book, and then you realize all the things that you wish you had included in it. But in any case, to your original question, Michael, that's what the Superman refers to, is those fans who, those particular gentlemen who have created wonderful communities of interest around different aspects of Superman. Very rich and very enjoyable.
Now, you mentioned the Christopher Reeve interview that you did back in 1983, and how you've included the full interview in this book, which has never been fully published before. How interesting was that to reflect on and to revisit that interview?
Oh, it was very interesting. I had been having a difficult time getting hold of Christopher Reeve, and he was a busy guy, of course, and he hadn't seen Superman 3 yet. This was in March of 1983 when I interviewed him. So I was speaking to his secretary on the phone, and she had the sniffles, and I sent her some vitamin C, powdered vitamin C in a jar, had a messenger send it over because she was on the west side of Manhattan and my office was on the east side. And she was so pleased with that. My phone rang about an hour later, and there was Chris Reeve on the phone.
Wow.
And as I say, we're about a year apart in age, and it was like talking to somebody that I knew for years, and very down to earth guy. And it was to revisit that interview today. It just makes you a little sad that he's not with us anymore. And some interesting things in there about the fact that he didn't like computers, and back then, most people didn't have a personal computer. Really, the personal computers really didn't become popular until maybe 85, 86, thereabouts. And then, of course, everybody had them, and same is true today. So, and he mentions about doing a Superman 4, and he doesn't want to do Superman 4, or he didn't want to do Supergirl, and and of course things turned out A little differently with Superman 4. He had a good reason for wanting to do it. They offered him the ability to address, nuclear disarmament, which was something that he thought was an important topic to talk about. So it was fun to revisit that and just to reflect on what a really decent, helpful guy he was. He didn't owe me anything. He didn't have to do the interview, but he was quite gracious, and he did the interview, and it was a great conversation. And I just presented it in the book in a way kind of uncut, the way the conversation really went with, because he had a tendency to begin sentences and then change course midstream where he'd come up with another idea. So I've tried to retain that flavor in the interview.
Nice.
Now, Superman on radio is another aspect of the character's history you delve into. Steve and I talk about the radio show frequently on this show. Do you think this is a chapter of Superman's history that is too easily dismissed today?
Well, I think a lot of people don't know about it, that it was an incredibly popular radio program. In the 1940s, essentially, there was no television. Development of television, the sort of episodic programs that we take for granted today really all started, or the kind of format started on the radio. And so I think Superman on the radio is kind of a forgotten chapter in Superman's media history. He was a major radio star in the United States. There was also an Australian version later on of Superman radio program. And the radio program dealt with sort of controversial topics at times, which was uncommon for a radio program aimed at young people. But those controversial topics really had to do with tolerance of different ethnic and religious backgrounds of people. How we all have to be accepting of one another, and it was really a very enlightened sort of a show. And I think radio has a certain magic too, with the pictures that you create in your mind. I think it's worth a listen. The Superman radio series, you can really get into it, and they covered a lot of territory. I mean, it was on for 10 years, and it was the antecedent to the television show. In fact, some of the scripts to the Adventures of Superman television show that was produced from 1951 to 1957 in Hollywood, those scripts came from the radio series. It was many of the same talents that had done the radio series. Robert Maxwell, for instance, who was the producer of the radio series, produced the first season of the television series. So I would encourage people, if they're curious, they should be curious about the Superman radio series. It was, he's kind of the master of all media, and at that time in radio's history, he was one of the big stars of radio. A daily 15-minute serial that would continue. And I've got an interview in there with Jackson Beck, who had been the announcer of the radio series, and which was first posted, in fact, Steve, on Superman homepage, as you know. And it was a fascinating interview. And Jackson Beck told me a story that has generated a certain amount of controversy. Jackson Beck claims it's true, that he met George Reeves once, just once. Superman radio series was produced in New York City, and he met George Reeves once for the purpose of being his best man at a apparently hastily arranged wedding, days before George Reeves was to go to Los Angeles and begin production of Superman and the Mole Men. So I'll leave it there, and if anybody wants to read more, they can read it in the book and read what Jackson Beck had to say. It's an interesting story, and Beck swore it was true, and so I'm just putting it out there. I'm just relaying what he told me, kind of one of those strange coincidental stories.
Yeah, it was. I remember reading that, thinking, "What?"
Yeah.
Fascinating. Now, also in the book, you examine Superman's 50th anniversary celebrations. What do you remember about that time?
Oh, I remember it quite clearly. I was editor of Videography magazine at the time, and I thought, hey, this is perfect for a cover story for the first issue I'll be totally responsible for, which was February 1988. And it was an attempt really to do a 1 hour special that covered all aspects of Superman's media history, or most of them, and do it in a humorous way. Of course, Superman being from a product of DC Comics, which was a subsidiary of Time Warner. The entire organization back then made sure that all branches of it were cooperating with celebrating Superman's birthday. So there he is on the cover of Time magazine. But there was also this television special. And as I say, I spoke to many of the people involved in producing it. They tried to infuse some humor in the show. I think some of the humor worked better than other parts of the humor. The show is available today on some of the DVD sets. I can't recall the names of the DVD sets, but you can go on Amazon, and there's one that's in a steel box, and there's another that's a Blu-ray edition, and you can see this 1 hour special. And for better or worse, it was. I'll just say it was interesting. Put it that way. But I remember quite well the 50th anniversary, because in another chapter in the book, I write about attending Superman's birthday party. They had a 50th birthday party for Superman on Friday, February 27, and the actual birthday was observed on Monday, the 29th, with a leap year day, as Michael points out. But it was a Friday night, so not a school night, as Jeanette Kahn, former DC president and publisher, pointed out. And so there was this birthday party at the Puck Building in Manhattan. Puck Building being a reference to some of the early newspaper publishing activity in the late 19th century in New York City. And a lot of history there. And there was various DC Comics folks, such as Julie Schwartz and Paul Levitz and other folks. And I write about how that party went. It was fun, and it's all described in the book. And I think they should have a Superman birthday party every year. But anyway, this was the 50th, and the mayor of New York City was there at the time, Edward I. Koch, and I actually CNN, Cable News Network, covered it as well. I actually got on camera for about 3 seconds. And so that was part of the 50th birthday. And I remember it well. It was a lot of fun, and just the kind of event that I could have a reason to attend because of being a magazine editor. So again, my job was such that I was able to attend special events such as that, and it was a fun time.
Now, I've got a question about another anniversary. But before I ask that, sticking with the 50th, did you get to go to did you see the Smithsonian exhibit, Many Lives, Many Worlds?
I did. Yeah, it was another coincidence. There was a video post-production house that had just opened in Washington, D.C. at the time, called Group Andre Perry. And I went down there from my office in New York to interview them because it was a major investment in post-production. And after I had done the interview, I went over to the Smithsonian and I saw the exhibit. And in fact, I took a lot of pictures, which only one of which is in the book. So I got to see that. Yeah, I was quite impressed with it. I thought it was well done. There was a Superman 4 costume. There was an Adventures of Superman TV costume there. And what did you think of it, Michael? Did you get to see it?
Yeah. Actually, my family, I had a couple aunts that lived close to DC, the Smithsonian, quite regularly when I was a kid. And this was right after I got into Superman comics. So
Mm-hmm.
walking into the National History Museum and seeing this exhibit, and they had a great gift shop full of Superman stuff. But the
Yes.
the thing I remember most vividly is kind of like realizing that Santa Claus doesn't exist. They had one of the breakaway shirts
Yes, right.
from Superman the movie, and it was the first time. Like, I might have been 11 at the time because it ran from 87 to 88. Uh, it was the first time I was like, wait, that was just that was a trick. They didn't just rip open the buttons. I mean, because for most of my young life, I was trying to figure out how they did it, and seeing how the trick was done was a little disappointing, actually. And they also had a room where they were showing serials and other Superman media. And there was a bunch of kids sitting in there and adults just watching that stuff. So it was I only got to go once, sadly, because of just how things worked out. But I was blown away by it. And a friend of mine sent me a bunch of pictures that he took, and it brought like all of it back. So yeah, I figured you had seen it, but I wanted to ask before I
Yes.
got into the book. But
Yes. Thank you.
comparing, yeah, but in comparison, Superman's 75th anniversary was another milestone that you cover. How do you feel the 75th was handled compared to the 50th?
Well, it was. Um, they did not have a party for Superman, as far as I know. I hadn't heard of one. They did do that video, that short animated video of Superman, which I thought was a nice piece of work. But I had the good fortune to find out about a event that an organization called the Center for Jewish History in New York had organized regarding Superman's 75th anniversary. And I attended that, and yeah, there we go. Um, it was quite fascinating. It was a panel discussion led by Larry Ty, who wrote the Superman biography just a couple of years prior to that. And the panelists included Jim Shooter, the DC and Marvel Comics writer. There was also Jeanette Kahn, who was the former publisher and president of DC Comics, and also Nikki Wheeler Nicholson, whose grandfather, Major Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson, created the company that original company that became DC Comics. So there was quite a freewheeling discussion, and I was there with my little tape recorder, and I transcribed it, and it's one of the chapters in the book, and that was one of the most fascinating events that I had attended, because they really got into some nitty gritty aspects of the character, the name Kal-El, which means voice or vessel of God, and the speculation as to how much Jerry Siegel was intending to imbue the character with these traditional ideas. And as I say, quite interesting to speculate on that. He really, Siegel apparently in his lifetime didn't divulge much information. So it's kind of a detective work to look into it to see how that could have been done. But other aspects of the character that Jeanette Kahn and Jim Shooter talked about, such as for Superman, no job too big, no job too small. And the fact that editors such as Mort Weisinger and Julie Schwartz repeated again and again to their writers that the essence of Superman has to be that he's a good person, he's a good man. Jeanette Kahn said that, I think it was Julie Schwartz made the observation, he's the one person who absolute power will not corrupt absolutely. And she also noted that, of course, these are people who their profession was to totally understand the character and how to depict him, that in the first Superman movie, rescuing the cat from the tree was just as important as saving Air Force One, because he had to have the common touch. If everything he did was grandiose and saving helicopters, plummeting off buildings, it would be not a character people could relate to, but to the little girl whose cat was in the tree, that was the most important crisis for her at the moment. So he was as determined to rescue the cat as he was to rescue the president. And I just found it fascinating. So I endeavored to communicate all of that in that chapter. And there's a wonderful little story at the end by a gentleman who was one of DC Comics co-founder Harry Donenfeld's grandchildren, about meeting George Reeves at Palisades Park in New Jersey in the 1950s, and how terrific it was to meet George Reeves. So that's in the chapter as well.
Fascinating. Now, you and I were both lucky enough to befriend Bob Holliday and met him in
Yes.
2003 at the Superman celebration in Metropolis, Illinois, where I
Yes.
had a fair bit of involved in getting him there and making him understand that he had definitely a part to play in the history of Superman.
Yes.
What did you know about Bob leading up to that? Because after that, obviously, a lot came out about the 66 Superman Broadway musical, It's a Bird, It's a Plane, It's Superman. But before then, he was relatively an unknown chapter in the Superman mythology amongst most Superman fans is what they knew. But being a bit of a historian on Superman, how much did you know about Bob leading up to that?
Well, I was lucky in the sense that I grew up in New York City, and of course that's where the Broadway theaters are. There he is, and so I knew about the musical. Unfortunately, I didn't attend it. One of my great regrets in my Superman fandom is that I never went to see the thing, and I'm sure one of my parents would have taken me had I asked them to. But in any case, I was besotted with Batman at the time because that had premiered on television in January 1966, and I think looking back, I probably wanted to see the musical, but by the time it became, I would get around to it, it had already left the theater after 129 performances on Broadway. It had more performances than that, of course, in the tryouts on Broadway, and in the previews in Philadelphia, and the following summer in St. Louis and Kansas City, there was over 200 performances. So, that makes Bob Holliday the record holder to this day for actors' live-action Superman portrayals in costume, flying, live, in front of the audience. So I knew about Bob Holliday. I knew who he was. I knew about the show. I had the original cast album for many years. And but unfortunately, because it was never filmed, as far as we know, no film of the Broadway show has ever surfaced other than the newsreel that was produced for it as part of the story called The Story of Superman, which you can see on the Tony Valesky Collins as the maintains the Superman Bob Holliday website. You can go there and see Bob Holliday's Superman Aquavelva commercial, and the newsreel from the Broadway musical, The Story of Superman, and Bob's appearance on I've Got a Secret, which was a television quiz show that was on in the U.S. in the 1960s. You can see those rare clips. But because the musical was never filmed, many people don't know about It's a Bird, It's a Plane, It's Superman, which was done by some very talented folks. It was produced by Hal Prince, who the late Hal Prince won the most Tony Awards of any producer on Broadway. Music by Charles Strauss from Bye Bye Birdie and Annie. And it's a fun show. And so I knew about Bob, and I was very fortunate when Chuck Harder contacted me and said, "Hey, we're going to go with Bob to Metropolis this June." This was 2003. We're going to shoot a documentary. I know that you're editor of a video magazine. You want to be involved? I said, "Oh, absolutely, yeah." So Chuck and Steve McCracken and I produced the documentary with Bob, who I met for the first time, who was just a wonderful guy, terrific. You knew him, Steve, because you were there, 2003, and just a charming, terrific guy. who loved being Superman on stage, who was a fan of the character all of his life, a great admirer of George Reeves, of Christopher Reeve, of everybody who played the character. He referred to them as his brothers. And it started a friendship that I maintained for years afterwards until he passed away. And speaking of Facebook groups, there's a Bob Holliday Facebook group that I created called Superman. What is the name of it? I'm on it every day. Bob Holliday Broadway Superman, or Broadway Superman Bob Holliday. Anyway, you'll find it. And I post rare content there as well, as does my partner in that endeavor, Tony Valesky Collins. So our aim, Tony and I, is to make people aware of Bob Holliday. I mean, this was really the only live action depiction of Superman in the 1960s. This 50s television show was very popular, and that was on TV in the 60s and even had bigger ratings than it did in the 50s. But in terms of an original Superman portrayer, Bob was the only one in the 1960s. And it's a fun show. It was nominated for 3 Tony Awards. Unfortunately, Batman was all Superman viewed on Broadway. I think people assumed that it was just more like Batman, which it really wasn't. And, why go to the theater and see Superman when I can see Batman on television for free twice a week? It was on, Batman was on, 7:30 at night. I think it was Wednesdays and Thursdays. And so, some shows take off and, others don't. But it was a definite important milestone in Superman media history. And the first superhero to be on Broadway. And so I tell the tale of that and about Bob's life and about a couple of revivals of the show that I attended with Bob, actually 3 of them I attended with Bob in New York City. And, my purpose is to acquaint Superman fans with Bob Holliday and his place in Superman history as one of the actors who played Superman and, played him very well. He was flying on wires and doing some acrobatic moves that were really, quite remarkable. And Bob was very serious about doing it right and, really paying tribute to the character. And the reviews in the newspapers for the show were tremendous. They loved it. The reviewers loved it. It was a terrific show. Funny without being overly silly, just really struck the right balance of exploring aspects of Superman's personality, his relationship with Lois Lane, and the jealousy that powerful people felt towards him. So if you haven't heard the original cast recording, it's never been out of print. Check it out. You can find it on YouTube. It's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman, and I, heartily recommend it to everyone.
For sure.
Now, you mentioned earlier that Superman has had such a influence in just the culture. And one of those would be on popular music with over, I think, 600 songs mentioning Superman in one way or another. Do you talk about this in your book?
I do, yes. I've got a chapter on Superman in popular music and how he has inspired music in just about every conceivable genre. And this is something that started pretty much at the beginning of Superman's career, not long after his first appearance in 1938. Benny Goodman, the great jazz clarinetist and leader of the big band, recorded a Superman jazz tune. A few years later, Miles Davis also wrote a Superman jazz tune, same title, Superman, different melody. And throughout the years, Superman has inspired. Let me grab a little water here. There we go. Excuse me. Barbra Streisand, Donovan, the Kinks. They've all had Superman hit tunes, songs, and there's more of these all the time. I mean, I've collected hundreds of these things. So probably about 20 years ago, I contacted Rhino Records, which a label I have a lot of respect for because they've done some great reissues. For instance, they did I think one or two CDs on baseball songs, like all the songs about baseball that have ever been recorded. They put them together on a CD. What a great idea. They've done that with other topics as well. And so I contacted them and said, hey, you guys should do a Superman CD. I mean, it's amazing the number of people who have done Superman songs not just mentioning Superman. Like Jim Croce's had the song Bad, Bad Leroy Brown, You Don't Tug on Superman's Cape. I didn't even include that one because that was just an incidental mention. I'm talking about songs that are Superman is a central metaphor or the subject of the tune. Rick Springfield had one, and Mary Chapin Carpenter, and Willie Nelson, and Eric Clapton, and all of these folks. And Rhino was very nice enough to get back to me and said, I think it's a great idea. We'd love to do it. We just, it cost money to license all of those songs. And, we're not sure we want to take the gamble. And I said, gamble? It's no gamble. This character is so popular. Everybody from, Eminem to Barbra Streisand has recorded a Superman tune. And then I hit him with, listen, you guys just, and no disrespect to the country music star Slim Whitman, but I said, you folks just released a compilation of Slim Whitman songs. I mean, if you could do that, I think you have no excuse for not doing a compilation of Superman songs. Again, no, I don't mean any to diss Slim Whitman, the late Slim Whitman at all. But in any case, I'm hoping to this day somebody will do it. Now, there was a CD put out by Warner Brothers, I think it was, called The Sound of Superman, which had cover artists doing various tunes, including Save Me, the Remy Zero song from Smallville. So that was kind of along the lines of what I was thinking of, but I really would like something that is specifically the songs that were written and recorded about Superman, Johnny Guitar, Watson, and the Commodores.
Yeah.
Sorry?
We've actually got a whole list on our website, Superman songs, which has got, like you said, 600 plus different songs about Superman that are mentioned, or Clark Kent, or what have you. But so it's definitely a subject well worth looking into. But Brian, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. We could go on for hours, I'm sure, talking about Superman in so many different aspects. But your book is titled With Thanks to Superman. It is available now. I cannot wait to read it. It just sounds so interesting, all the different topics that you've covered in the book. Is there anything you want to leave us with as we say thank you for coming on the show tonight?
Yeah, well, I hope I haven't been talking to excess, and I enjoy the opportunity to talk to you gentlemen and tell you about the book. I hope people enjoy it. And it was fun to write it. And there's a bibliography at the end of the book for further reading. I think Superman is a terrific and positive character. It's a good character. It's all about doing the right thing. And I'm very encouraged by the positive reaction that the book is getting thus far. And I thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about it.
Thanks, Brian. Really appreciate you coming on. It's been a real pleasure to catch up with you, and we wish you all the success with Thanks to Superman. So thanks again for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So don't forget, folks, you can head to supermanhomepage.com to check out the links to Brian's book, With Thanks to Superman. Highly recommend you pick it up. But for now, I want to say thanks, Brian, and thanks everyone for tuning into this episode of Superman Homepage Live. It's been a real pleasure. I want to thank my co-host, Michael Bailey, who's had to quickly duck out from tonight's show. Thanks, Michael, for co-hosting once again with me. And thank you, everyone, for watching Superman Homepage Live. Really appreciate you taking the last hour of your evening to be with us on tonight's show. Thanks to our sponsors and patrons, Douglas Meacham, John Patrick Van Pelt, and Tina Murray. And thanks to everyone for watching Superman Homepage Live. Don't forget, check out supermanhomepage.com for all your daily news updates on everything surrounding the Man of Steel. On behalf of myself, Michael Bailey, and Brian McKernan, thanks for watching Superman Homepage Live, brought to you by supermanhomepage.com.